Okay, you're live.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to our April 6th council meeting. As this is a special council electronic meeting as a result of the order in council recently issued by the province of Ontario declaring an emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the requirements for social distancing, this special council meeting is being held electronically in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act. The procedures for the meeting are as per the town's procedural bylaw and the electronic meeting protocol during emergencies. I will now ask the clerk to conduct a roll call of council present.
I will call the roll of council. Deputy Mayor Nancy Alcock.
Present.
Councillor Dan Armour.
Present.
Councillor Jason Fitzgerald.
Present.
Councillor Dion Schumacher.
Present.
Councillor Bob Stone.
Present.
Councillor Brian Thompson.
This again.
Councillor Thompson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor
Present. Present.
Councillor Tim Whitney.
Here.
Mayor Karen Terziano.
Present.
The following staff are also confirmed as present. Crystal Bessarres, Deputy Clerk. Denise Corey, CAO. Joel Duffield, Network and Server Administrator. Steve Kernan, Director of Operations and Protective Services. Lauren McDermott, Manager of Marketing. Kirsten Maxwell, Director of Development Services. Julia McKenzie, Treasurer Manager of Finance. Lori O'Brien, Director of Community Services. Lisa Smith, Manager of Human Resources.
Okay, I have, actually will ask for a mover and seconder to approve the adoption of the agenda. Could I have Councillor Fitzgerald move that? Thank you. And Councillor Wiebe, would you second that? Thank you. Be it resolved that the special council meeting agenda dated Monday, April 6, 2020 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Just before we move into reports from municipal officers, I want to take this opportunity to see what council's been hearing from the community. I know myself, I've been hearing a lot through emails and texts and telephone calls about the concerns of the community. And I thought that I would give council an opportunity briefly, each of you, to let us all know what you've been hearing. So I'm just going to start at the, I'm just going to start alphabetically, I think. So I'll start with Deputy Mayor Nancy Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and great idea. Yeah, I'm sure like everybody else, the things that you hear on a daily basis, it changes up, and all of a sudden one day you're worried about people who need to access the food bank, or the next day it will be, I had 2 or 3 people in the same day who were really worried or concerned about people that were congregating and who do they call. I had an odd one. It was at one of our local motels where a number of the people that the district houses temporarily in the winter, the owners of the motels weren't enforcing the social distancing, so the person wasn't sure whether they should be phoning the district or whatever. And I confess at that moment in time I wasn't quite sure, but I've since talked to the district, and I also gave that person who I spoke to the number that I believe we were provided with, which is the OPP number, right? I think. So I guess my lesson around that is the more communication, the better. When we have information that we need to get out to the community, as soon as possible, it would be great to have it so we know what to say. And I'm not saying every day seems to be, as I said, something new. And I guess on a brighter note, though, I mean, there are all of these questions and concerns and questions raised, but on a brighter note, I'm hearing from people who are working with local businesses or local businesses themselves that are adapting to the new reality. And if they used to be a retail store that relied on people coming in off the street, they've adjusted to internet service. And I can think of at least a handful that have kind of completely readjusted the way they do business. And it's really inspirational to hear and see. Not to say everything's tickety-boo, but for me, every day is a learning experience. And for me, the biggest message is communication, communication, communication. The more information we have and the more we get it out there to people, I have the strangest requests from business owners and people who are trying to do things differently, but aren't quite sure how to access the system. So a whole bunch of things. And I appreciate the opportunity to share this because I'd be really curious to see what other people are hearing as well.
Great, thank you. Councillor Armour, do you have something to share?
Thank you, Worship. Not a whole lot more than the Deputy Mayor spoke about. I follow along quite a bit with the emergency aspect of the COVID itself, and I think people are adapting well, and I have a lot of faith going forward.
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. I guess I'm just proud of my community. I see everyone doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think the town staff have done a great job, and you've done a very good job relating to the public what's acceptable and what isn't. And for the most part, in Port Sydney, where I seem to be stuck, everyone is being helpful and abiding by the rules. So I'm happy to see that.
Thank you. Councillor Schumacher?
Yeah, I'd echo Councillor Fitzgerald for the most part. I think the area has kind of agreed to what has been asked of them. I did have a couple of calls from constituents over the weekend, some concerns about people just congregating in their driveway. They were doing the social distance piece and keeping apart, but still having friends over, that type of thing, or neighbors maybe inviting family up for the weekend to stay with them. And I get that it's family, but again, impressing upon them that, family needs to stay apart, even unless they're in the same home, kind of thing. One of the ones that I guess did speak to me was I've had a constituent reach out and was concerned about our last council meeting and felt that as a group, we talked more about money than necessarily people the last council meeting around. And I thought that pretty resonated because they felt Huntsville is more about its people than it is necessarily about saving a few dollars. So that one kind of hit home for me. And I realized that no, I think probably a lot of the conversation we did have about people maybe didn't make it to the open public part that I would like to impress upon, that I think we have thought a lot about the people. But speaking with my other hat on, I have seen, as Nancy talked about, the good side of things, where with the CDC announcing cloth masks and things being what we should be wearing, everyone out in community, we've had donations of cloth masks to community living. We've had donations, because that tends to be the sector that a lot of people forget about. We're not quite healthcare, but yeah, so it's been nice to see the community step up and offer some, help with regards to the staff that are going in each and every day in our group homes, which is nice to see too.
Thanks. Councillor Stone?
I've been getting calls and emails about the many cottagers that are coming up here to wait this out. And they're quite concerned. Obviously, our small hospital isn't ready for a big influx beyond our local citizens at this time. But many of you also know that the plumbers and the cottage maintenance companies have banded together and said, we're not going to be opening these cottages for the people headed this way until the emergency is over. And I really take my hat off to them for not taking the business in order to do the right thing.
Councillor Thompson?
Okay, can you hear me now? I think I'm going, okay. Yeah, I heard a couple of things. Number one was a couple of different people commented on the amount of traffic on Friday, not only at local gas stations and one grocery store in particular, but it was almost like summer. And there was concern in that regard that the appropriate social distancing was not taking place, particularly at the grocery store. And it didn't seem that that particular one anyway, things were set up adequately for that particular purpose. I've had other concerns too, with regards to a couple of decisions that we made earlier on with regards to dust suppression and that kind of thing, the sweeping of back roads and so on and so forth. But something that I will bring up later on in our council meeting, I think, Your Worship. But other than that, it's mostly has to do with the number of people that seem to be coming in on Fridays. It's quite similar to a summer weekend from what I've been hearing.
Thank you. Councillor Wee?
Thank you, Your Worship. I much like what you've heard already, I've heard the similar comments. One thing that sticks out in my mind is a text I got from a friend of mine who wasn't sure, who called me to ask my opinion on what the right thing to do was. And I know that may sound overly simplistic, but I think a lot of the people in the trades, et cetera, are getting mixed messages. On one hand, they hear our premier saying, please stay home. And on the other hand, work is proceeding, and they don't know if they feel like they're actually providing an essential service or not. They feel kind of stuck in two spots. So it was an interesting conversation, and I know that's obviously with what you heard from the plumbers, et cetera. There are a lot of people in the trades, which makes up a large number of the workforce here, that feel kind of stuck in two spots. So that was one thing that kind of stuck out for me among all the other things said. But anyway, thanks for the opportunity.
And Councillor Withy.
Thank you. I'm kind of in a somewhat unique position in that I have a lot of commercial clients that operate businesses in this town. The common comment I'm hearing from them is that they don't think they're going to make it, that they can't last being closed now or for much longer. A number of the larger resorts that are clients of mine are calling, not because I know any better, but to vent and because they're concerned that they're not going to have a summer season at all. As others have spoken, it's great to be optimistic. I'm afraid that we are in this for the long haul, and there's going to be a lot of long-standing issues for a lot of our people, not only business owners, but their employees. I also sit on the board of a local private school. We had a board meeting yesterday, and there's a discussion on whether it will survive in the future because of the number of boarders that come from out of country. So I believe we have to hope for the best, but plan for the worst. I think that I'm sure we'll get into some of this discussion later, but I'm not getting calls about traffic on highways. I'm not getting calls about people congregating. I'm getting calls about people that are losing their livelihoods and the livelihoods of their employees. I can't, I'm understating it, to be frank. I wish I had a better story to tell, but this is what I'm hearing on a daily basis, every day, all day long. So, sorry to end on that note with this discussion, but that's the reality of what I'm hearing. And I think that's where people are looking to us to make the right decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all, Council. I think it's important that our constituents know that that we are hearing from them and we're hearing what they're saying, and that we are indeed trying to make the best decisions we can. Just a couple of reminders for our residents that it is Easter weekend coming up, and it's usually a time that you spend with family and friends, and this will be a different Easter for us all, that we'll have to do it through digital media and telephone calls, and it won't be a normal Easter. And one other thing is that we also have a fire ban going on, and this is the time of year that lots of people like to gather outside with campfires. So we can't do that either. So remember that this weekend. Practice safe distancing, and let's keep our community as healthy as we can. For those looking for the numbers, whether you need to contact the OPP or for any reason to report anything, if you go to the Huntsville website, huntsville.ca, follow the COVID-19 link, and all that information is there. Okay, so let's go on to our regular business. And the first is a report from Director O'Brien on Community Service Group immediate needs.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship and members of Council. I'm here to report to you on the work that we did reaching out to a small number of community agencies in the community to get a sense of what was their experience in terms of dealing with COVID-19 and whether they had the resources to cope. So before you is a report that outlines a number of the community services that we did contact just to get a sense of what was going on, and the results of those are before you. What I'm seeing is a town of Huntsville that has a wonderful group of not-for-profits that are really coming together, collaborating and trying to do the best they can under very dire circumstances. For the most part, I would say that most of the not-for-profits as a whole are coping right now, that they are anticipating a rise in number of clients that they serve as time goes on and people's needs become greater. Most of them are looking at what critical services they can provide, and those have been mainly focused right now on making food available to people and in some cases shelter. As you can see from my report, the province has put together a number of relief packages to help not-for-profits deal with the increasing numbers of people that they're servicing during COVID-19. And those resources are just starting to get rolled out to the community. Not in the report was a conversation I had with a woman that works for Victim Services. Right now, none of their volunteers are out doing work right now because of a lack of personal protective equipment, but the government just rolled out funding for that, and they expect to be able to have boots on the ground very soon to deal with what they anticipate will be rising domestic issues where their services are needed. The Salvation Army in town is seeing a very large increase in the number of people that are requesting food services, probably about 2 to 3 times the amount of people that they normally service, up to about 120 calls per day. They're also really challenged because some of their food sources are also under stress, so they're having to give out less amount of food to more people. So that's an increasing challenge. The Table Food Bank, a wonderful organization, provides about 7 different areas of support to our community. very busy. When I was talking to the woman there, I had to call her back 3 times to finish our conversation because of the number of people that they're dealing with. So certainly they would appreciate either money donations or donations of food, as well as what we should be aware of from the housing point of view there. They offer a men's shelter. They've had to actually decrease the number of beds that they offer because of the COVID health restrictions. So I think they have about 7 to 8 beds normally, and they've gone down to about 3 to 4 at present, just to get the social distancing in place. An update on the Muskoka seniors. They are now offering frozen meals. They're going to be available as of today. Their office is going to remain closed. They do have a staff member there on Mondays and Tuesdays. Their other services, the income tax, the transportation, the friendship lunches are remaining suspended. Faith Baptist Church has not right now seen an increase in calls, but they are expecting and ready to service the community. They have a very strong volunteer support group. They have about 35 volunteers who are ready and willing to help out as needed. There was also an indication on one of the calls that I was on with the district that CAA is stepping up, and we are going to be looking into this. There are people across Canada who are willing to help out with people's oh, I supposed to start my video, excuse me. Guess you want to see me. CAA is stepping up to provide drivers. So we're going to be looking into that also to help out some agencies. At the district level, the District of Muskoka has seen a spike in their services. And they are really playing a collaborative role with all the municipalities right now. I've been on 3 different Zoom calls with them where we're developing a poster for how people can access help that's up to date, that's got local people attached to give those services. As you know, as a town, we have preventative social recreation programs that are on hold right now because of COVID-19. Some of those involve at-risk populations and seniors and food programs. So right now they're on hold. Many of our staff who aren't working are reaching out to their client lists who they service, and we are experiencing people who are really grateful for the call and the phone support and who are feeling socially isolated in the community. And in some cases, people haven't seen people for about 2 weeks. So there certainly is a growing sense of resources being needed and clients being needed to be served greater into the future as this continues. So I will leave it at that and open up the floor for any questions.
Okay, I probably should have read a resolution first. If I can get a mover and seconder for the resolution, Councillor Wiebe and Councillor Alcott, thank you. So I have a resolution that says, be it resolved that council direct staff to assist with community agencies to connect residents to resources, services, programs, and support during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that council continue to advocate for funding for social service agencies to service those most in need. And I also have an amendment moved by Councillor Wiebe and seconded by Councillor Alcott that says, be it resolved that the following paragraph be added, and further that council direct staff to provide $2,500 to the Table Food Bank and $2,500 to the Salvation Army to assist with ongoing supplies relating to COVID-19 to be funded from the council discretionary budget. I guess I need to call the question on the amendment first. You can ask questions first if you want on the amendment. Are there any questions on the amendment? No questions? All in favor of the amendment? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And then the main motion as amended. Be it resolved that council, the main motion as amended, yes. Be it resolved that council direct staff to assist with community agencies to connect residents to resources, services, and programs and support during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that council continue to advocate for the funding for social service agencies to service those most in need. And further, that council direct staff to provide $2,500 to the Table Food Bank and $2,500 to the Salvation Army to assist with ongoing supplies relating to COVID-19 to be funded from the council discretionary budget. Questions? Comments? Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you. Great report, Lori. I know that a lot of this information is new to you, but you've hit the ground running, so good work. There was one Lions Club you neglected in your report, and that's the little one from Stevenson District Lions Club. We meet in Port Sydney. We just donated $8,000 to a $2,000 to each hospital and $2,000 to each food bank in Bracebridge and in Huntsville. And I will provide you with contact information because we do have more resources available for people that need our help. So I think it's great that we've decided to use our discretionary fund in this manner. So I'm happy to support that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's more of a comment. Thank you, Lori, for the report. It was nice to read about all of the different agencies for sure. I just wanted to add to that. I know that you've been working with the district in their coordinated effort, and they're working with all of the municipalities. I had a chat with Commissioner Hastings there today, and that the work of that whole committee, which you're part of, she was saying is really instrumental with trying to pull in all of the information, just as you did in your note. And two of the things that I thought I would just mention is that so far there hasn't been this huge uptick on people looking for housing, not yet. But you're right, there was a big uptick on people applying for OW, Ontario Works. So the sort of the emergency assistance is really big. But she also said that this week the issue seems to be mental programs for mental illness, and I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly, but that seems to be a new area. So the final thing I wanted to say is we are having a community and planning services district community and planning services meeting next week through Zoom. And a full report will be presented at that meeting that will also discuss the new provincial funding that will be delivered through, a lot of that delivered through the district. So that should be an important meeting to find out how and how much money will be coming for those programs. So that I just wanted to add. And thank you for your report.
Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Lori, I just wonder, have you heard anything from the feds or province on funding coming through for the local food banks? Because there was an announcement there last week about more money for those organizations.
Yeah, I've probably heard just what you've heard in terms of the press releases. I think it's just not got to them yet, but I think it is coming. I think the other thing that I didn't mention, which I found out today, and some of you may have read too, is that our private business community is coming together. So the Muskoka Builders Association has started to do a fundraising campaign. They want to raise about $100,000, and they've committed a $10,000 donation from their members. So that's really been great to see from the business community.
I think also, just further to your question, Councillor Armour, I talked directly to the Salvation Army today, and they did say that they knew that they were getting, I believe, federal money, but they thought that it would be probably 4 weeks coming, and they indicated that they could really use something today, which is part and parcel of why we decided to do what we're doing today. I did talk to Heather Berg from the table a few days ago as well. So I think this will be money directed to both organizations that is really needed while they're waiting for those federal funds. The other thing, just so that the public knows, for those who wish to give as well, one of the things that the Salvation Army told me when I was talking to them is if you call their number and make your donation over the phone, it goes directly to the Salvation Army here as opposed to head office. If you do it online, it goes to head office and the distribution is not always to here. So for those who would like to donate to the Salvation Army on their own or the Table Food Bank, call them directly on their Huntsville lines. Okay, if there's no other comments, I will call the question on the amended motion. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Okay, the next item of business is our projected financial report from our treasurer, Julia McKenzie. Julia?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the report is an update on the expected financial position of the town for 2020 due to the impacts of COVID-19. As we don't know the timelines of when we are expected to see a recovery, we have made the general assumptions in our forecast that the facilities and the programs will be closed to the end of the year. So based on the assumptions that have been outlined in the report, we're expecting to see an excess of approximately $831,000 at the year end. As outlined in Appendix A, there's a significant expected reduction in the revenues that we expect to see to the end of the year that have been offset by associated reductions in expenses. There's also been some significant changes in staff. And just to go through those in a bit more detail, in the forecast, we have a reduction of staff by about $1.8 million. This reduction, you can see it's further broken down in Appendix A where it's broken down by department, if you want to see where those numbers are coming from. We've also shown it in the two different phases that we've actually already implemented. So the first phase included reduction of part-time hours with regards to the school closures, and that was five part-time employees. Reduction of part-time seasonal staff due to the programs not running, and that was approximately 60 part-time employees. We've also had one voluntary layoff that was granted, which is one full-time employee. So phase two, which has also been completed at this point, includes part-time staff hours being reduced due to program cancellation of an additional 70 part-time staff. So that brings the total to about 130 part-time. Voluntary layoffs granted, we had an additional full-time employee that wanted that. So now we have two. We also had staff layoff due to program cancellation. That's one full-time staff. And then we have vacant positions that are not going to be filled this year, and that's 9 full-time employees. We've also have a reduction in volunteer firefighter training, and that's due to the fact that they have to have the social distancing in place for the training. So that overall reduction for phase one is about almost 900,000, and the phase two is just under $1 million. So the overall, or the detail can be found in the report for each of the divisions and the department. It's also important to note that if programs are able to come back online, this will further reduce the excess that we've shown here, as most of the programs are not revenue neutral. However, because of the fact that we would likely be bringing any programs back online in a phased-in approach, the impact of this would be minimized. And we would probably bring back programs on a reduced level to make sure that the safety of the participants is taken into account, and also how we've been advised by the province to bring programs back online. So its expected costs would be somewhat mitigated due to the fact that there would be a phased-in approach and reduced service levels. So we also just want to ensure that you know that we will be coming back with updates regularly on this as information becomes available, and we'll be providing more forecasts as we learn more. So if there is any other questions on the report, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Julia. And this is a report for information only, so we don't have a resolution, but if there are any questions of council or comments, Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. Julia, just for clarification, you said, so does reduction of part-time staff hours due to whatever, does that equal, is that a different way of saying that part-time staff have been laid off? Or are they, is everybody still on the payroll doing other things for less money?
There have been layoffs. So the part-time staff that wouldn't have those hours anymore, though, they would be laid off.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of council? Okay. Oh, Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick one. With social distancing, are we policing that at all with our bylaw department, or is that we leaving that just for the police and for reporting?
I'll ask the CAO to weigh in on that.
Thank you, Worship. So we are dealing strictly with the OPP at this time. They will advise us accordingly if they do need us to provide backup in the event that they have excessive calls. So right now we're relying on the OPP and we would report accordingly.
Okay. Okay, the next part of our meeting, and I promise will not be as long as the last time, but I need a mover and seconder to go into closed session for the next piece of this meeting. Can I have a mover? Councillor Armour, and a seconder? Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public, commencing now at 5:36 p.m. for the purpose of considering the following matter pertaining to section 239(2)D, labor relations or employee negotiations, and F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege. Confidential report CAO 2020-13, business continuity update number 2. All in favor? And that's carried. And we need to sign out now, council, and then sign back into the closed session. Thank you.
Are we in the right spot?
I think so. I don't know. At least we're all
I'm
together.
over on the right-hand side of my screen. Does it say council is currently in closed session and will
Yeah.
return short?
Yeah.
Okay. So we
Yeah.
all must be in the right spot, right?
We're either all in the right spot or all in the wrong spot.
Or in the wrong spot. Let me know though. Let me know if I shouldn't be over here on the right-hand side of my screen.
We're going to stick together, Nancy.
That's a lovely picture over your left shoulder, Nancy.
I'm in.
That one over there?
Yeah.
That was one I got.
I'm viewing the desktop.
Yeah, month.
Huh?
Society switches through pictures.
Yeah.
I got that from that. It's one of I think that was Pat Hill, one of our local artists.
Very nice.
Yeah, thanks.
We're not back in open yet?
Yes, we are.
Are we back live streaming though?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Very good.
Okay. I need a mover and seconder for the motion to accept the report from closed session. Can I have a mover? Councillor Armour, and a seconder. Councillor Thompson, thank you. I have a motion. Be it resolved that the Chief Administrative Officer continue to determine the level of staffing required while monitoring the financial implications to ensure there is minimal negative effects on municipal operations and to prepare the municipality to revitalize services in a responsive manner. Questions? All in favor? Oh, sorry. Did you have a question, Councillor Stone? No. All in favor?
Oh, no, you had a question.
I have a question.
Okay. Are there any questions?
So yes, it says responsive manner, and I'm just, I think the actions have been a little too slow so far. If I can, through you to the CAO, can I ask have staff been offered to use their vacation pay and days in lieu in order to lay them off a little sooner?
Through your worship. So we have had those conversations at the senior team level. The issue with that, and we certainly will be dealing with that option depending on the individual, but it doesn't really provide any cost savings at this time. So if we are looking for funds to offset expenses or to help the municipality in a financial position by offering for staff to take their vacation ahead of the layoff doesn't assist with that regard. But we will definitely be working with any staff who may be affected by a temporary layoff, and we will be looking at that option. Yes.
Follow-up?
If you can just describe to me what responsive manner means in as far as the timeline goes.
Through your worship.
Yep.
So we are and have been over the past 3 weeks gauging the level of work that is required to be done. Even though programs and such were canceled, we still had a lot of work in front of us to contact the individuals who had registered for programs, get rebates back to those individuals because the program's not running. So those types of things we've been working on over the past 3 weeks. A responsive manner would be as that workload decreases and resources are no longer required, then I will be dealing with those situations accordingly. So responsive manner is as long as there is work that needs to be completed, we need to make sure that we have adequate resources to support that work. But in the event that work decreases, then I will be taking the proper steps to be reactive to that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. I have trouble with that phrase as well. It's too, there's not enough information in that for me just to say responsive matter and as long as there's work here and there. I felt in the last meeting that we should have been more decisive about what we needed to reduce now, because I think we need to reduce now. And some of the stuff that is carrying on that is sort of arbitrary, or yes, we need to clean this up or clean that up, it could result in less than desirable financial results for the town to be successful coming out of this. So I'm not liking that wording. I want something a little more concrete than that. I would prefer a plan that was more decisive in nature rather than so open-ended.
So to that end, I would say you're certainly welcome to propose an amendment if it's about wording. And while you ponder that, I will go to the next question. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm under the impression that we are going to meet on a weekly basis as the situation evolves, and that we will get detailed reports like we have been receiving from the CAO and from our CFO. So I don't think I want to be hung up on the wording as much as hung up on the information that we receive on a weekly basis, and that there's detail in that.
I don't want to burst your bubble, but I don't think we're going to try to meet on a weekly basis. Possibly bi-weekly, or we'll get into our regular council cycle maybe, but hopefully we don't have to do this on a weekly basis. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think the wording is perfect myself. I think it dovetails exactly with the resolution that we passed at the last meeting going forward, and giving the responsibility going forward to the CAO with regards to staffing and so on and so forth. Because as we have said, and we continue to say, this is fluid. And I mean, it's only been a week since we had the last meeting, so I don't know how things could have drastically changed in that time period to the degree that might be being suggested here. So I think the wording is more than adequate, and I'd have trouble changing any part of it, actually. I think the whole process that we approved last was the proper route to go, and I think the wording in the resolution dovetails exactly with that. I think it fits perfectly. Thank you.
Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to say I'm very supportive of the current wording. I trust our senior management team to make the right decisions at the right time for us. They're the ones out there doing the work, and they know what's actually happening, and I can't make those calls for them. But I know they know our desire, and I know they know the desire of the taxpayers and the constituents, and I trust them to make the proper calls at the right time.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
I guess I would like to echo Councillor Armour's sentiments. We've entrusted the CAO and the executive staff to lead us this far, and they're in those positions because we do rely on them to make good decisions for the corporation.
Thank you. Councillor Whitney?
I, of course, disagree. I feel that 2 meetings ago, when we asked for a report that identified essential and non-essential staff at all levels, I think that's the report that, and I know it was tabled, but that was a report that I felt was what we asked for, what was delivered, and should have been adopted. So as far as changing the wording to reflect that, I'm pretty much feel that it wouldn't pass this group anyway. But that's my feeling on it. I felt we requested that essential, non-essential list, and that's where we should be, if not that's where we should be at today, because things are changing rapidly everywhere here and across the globe. So that's what I'm going to say about it. That's how I feel.
Councillor Alcock?
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, if I could ask Councillor Withey a question. So how would you change the wording in the last line to reflect that? I'm just curious. I would like to know what the wording would be.
Well, I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to get back to you on that. But if we go back to what's essential and non-essential, I think that should be adhered to. I'm not much of a wordsmither, but as far as I just echo Councillor Stone's comment. I think it's I think we should be more decisive.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess there's so many gray areas in essential and non-essential services. I think of a young family where both parents aren't working and they have their kids registered for lacrosse, and maybe they're looking for their refund. And if we don't have some non-essential staff there to deal with that, is that going to be a difference for that family putting food on the table or having what they need to look after their family? So I think it is fluid, like everyone's saying, and that a week is not going to make another difference. I know, Your Worship, you've said that possibly we're going to get back on our regular schedule. I think that because the situation's so fluid, that maybe we do need to meet sooner than that, or more often than that. But I think that we as a council make a lot of difficult decisions, but we are not aware all the time of the daily operations where the CAO and the executive management team are. And that I do, again, trust them and would never question their integrity as who is required or who is not required to make things run efficiently and cost effectively.
Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to our CAO, I'm wondering if the approach to this file is from the perspective of worst case scenario, and if so, what around the table, can you give me a sense for how senior management feels about what the worst case scenario could look like?
Through your worship. So all of us are really not sure how this is going to end up. We know that we're in this for a long time. Part of our role is also to determine how we get back into recovery. I've spent quite a few hours today reading through email that talks about the importance of economic development and the recovery of your community, and how your constituents are going to be looking up to this level of government to provide that normalcy once we come out of this pandemic. So when the senior management team looks at the need today, tomorrow, and what that looks like 4 months from now, we really have to do our best guesstimate, and I don't think there's anyone that has any idea when this is going to go away or how quickly we're going to recover. But what we're looking at is the essential and non-essential list honestly was a fairly easy exercise, because we could determine based on the list from the province and various services what was required. The senior management team then took a different approach when that list was tabled, and we looked at things such as the timelines for recovery, the intellectual knowledge that we need in the organization. We looked at things such as what are the accreditations that are required in order to carry out the functions within the municipality. So what I can tell you is we do have a step 3 that the senior management team will be proceeding with. parts of that discussion I can't have in open. We could have responded to these inquiries and closed, but we can't discuss this in open session. So what I can tell you is we have looked at a number of factors that sets the municipality up, we believe, for success today as we work our way through the pandemic, and will assist us with the recovery when that time comes, because that is just as important how you react to that as it is in how we react to when the pandemic's occurring. So I can't tell you what that looks like at the end, but I can tell you the decisions made by the senior management team and at the end of the day, supported by me, will help deal with the challenges that we're facing now and assist us with recovery in the end. And I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that's the best I have.
Can I just follow up quickly?
Sure.
I guess just for me to sum it up, I'll sleep better, and I think everyone in this town will sleep better, knowing that our staff are considering what the worst case scenario could be. Because I think if some of the different areas in this on the planet have not done that, they've kind of taken a lax approach to it. I'm thinking about maybe Sweden at this time, and even England early on. Some areas they kind of felt. They probably regret some of their decisions early on. And I guess what I'm saying is, as long as our staff are keeping their eye on that worst case, I think we'll be prepared for it. And that's what I've been advocating for, and I'll keep pushing for it, because I just don't want us to be caught trying to scramble to, whether it's, set up makeshift hospitals or whatever. I mean, I don't want to sound alarmist, but I just want to make sure that we're always keeping that lens nearby, because that ultimately, I think, will be the thing that ensures our success coming out of it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Councillor Weed was saying in regards to, I think, what we want to see, and I think what we sometimes fall short of sometimes is that we are reactive to situations instead of being proactive to situations, and we don't want to sort of be behind the 8 ball, so to speak, right? We want to have, as you've suggested, those worst case scenarios, and hopefully we don't have to go to maybe the worst case scenarios, but what are those? And we want to make sure that we know that those are available, and we may have to make that tough, hard decision about the worst case scenario, but it's good to have all of that on the table for us. I would also echo Councillor Fitzgerald. I mean, I guess I'm used to doing, now they are other committees or whatever, I'm used to doing 3 to 4 meetings a month. So I'm okay if we are meeting weekly or bi-weekly, if that's what needs to happen in order to make those proactive decisions moving forward as a council. Of course, that being said, next Monday is Easter Monday, so we would probably go in a couple of weeks. But I think if we are seeing some rapid changes over the past weekend, different things being announced all the time, I think we need to be probably on the ball with meeting maybe more frequently than just our regular monthly council sessions.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. Couple things. Just a reminder on that list of essential and non-essential. We as council did not make that up. That was made up by the senior management team. So that's where that determination was. Now to sort of carry on about the big picture, I think one discussion that we haven't had talking about when we come back out of this is what's going to happen to our small businesses in this town. We haven't discussed tax increase rollbacks, some reduction in taxes for the next property tax round with some of these savings that we're seeing here. I really think that even though there's some support coming from other levels of government, I really think it's prudent for us to have this discussion as well on how we can support our small business locally with some sort of tax break, tax reduction. We put through a small increase this year's budget. I think we could start by rolling that back. I'm very concerned, as I said off the top, with commercial businesses that I hear from daily in this town about who's gonna make it and who isn't, and how close to that line things are. I'm very concerned that once we get back into business globally, that we may not have businesses here. We may have a ghost town for Main Street. Don't want to sound alarmist, but that's the reality that's out there. So again, I think we need to have that discussion as well, as what are we prepared to do? And maybe it's not something we do in this exact meeting, but I think we need to have these discussions about what we can do for our constituents. It's one thing to worry about the staff in town hall, but we've got 20,000 people in Huntsville that are listening to us, and about what kind of leadership and decisions we can make to help them any way we can.
Thank you. I have to say, I agree with what you're saying in that we will have future direction to give to staff as we go forward, because a lot of the things you talk about are indeed concerning, and they will be decisions we have to make in the future. But that's not the decision before us today. We have a resolution before us today to accept the report or not. So if there are any other questions or comments based on the resolution before us, if not, I'm going to call the question. Are there any other questions based on the resolution before us? Okay, if everybody remembers the resolution, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Just further to the meeting schedule, we will meet when we need to meet. We just won't automatically say we have to meet every week, but believe me, if we have a reason to meet, we will absolutely meet. So the next report on our agenda is the report on the capital projects. I have a resolution before me, and I need a mover and a seconder for the capital project. Councillor Fitzgerald moves and Councillor Armour seconds. So be it resolved that staff be directed to delay the capital projects as outlined in report Corp 2020-23 COVID-19 Capital Projects 2020 report number 1. Julia.
So at the last meeting, we brought back a report on what capital projects could be deferred in the event that we need to defer them. We were further directed to bring back a report on which capitals should proceed into 2020. So this is what we brought to you today, and which should be deferred. So below in the discussion section, I've outlined a listing of the projects that that we could defer in 2020. So for operations and protective services, roads and fleet, there's a couple of pickup trucks and a half-ton truck that will be deferred. And part of that is due to the fact that they can't fulfill the order for that because the manufacturer cannot. Also the salt and sand shed, moving that to 2021. In parks and cemetery, there's a couple of projects there, the Hutchison Cemetery Road, flagpoles, Ilfracombe Cemetery, fencing, and the decommissioning of the Port Sydney tennis court. And that's primarily due to the fact that you need to have public discussion on that one. For fire and emergency services, the training facility, deferring that to 2021. Under community services, under facilities, there's a few items there that can be deferred to 2021. The glycol pumps, the Algan air handling unit, the exhaust rooftop, and the roof at the Stevenson Hall. At the Algonquin Theatre, there's lighting, sound equipment, audio visual, furniture, and some kitchen equipment that would also be deferred. At Muskoka Heritage Place, there was the rail equipment, and that was also dependent on a grant. And right now, they're not in a position to apply for or to be looking for that, so that would be deferred. And a couple of small things, canoes and furniture under sales and leisure services. So those total just about $933,000. And this is, so we would still expect the other projects that were in the approved capital budget to go ahead, as long as we're still adhering to the provincial restrictions that are in place and making sure that people are being safe doing so.
Okay. And it was made perfectly clear by the province today that infrastructure projects in the municipality are considered to be essential and are go-ahead projects. So are there any questions or comments? Councillor Armour.
Just a comment, Your Worship. I want to say thanks for the report, Julie and Steve. I think it's great. I think it's nice to see us going ahead with these projects, and it's going to show that our town is still moving ahead and that we haven't come to a standstill. Thanks very much.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm good there. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'd like to go back to discussions we had actually last week, considering the fact that we have the surplus that we're looking at right now, and one of the projects that we decided to put on hold last week was dust suppression. And I think there's a good case and a good argument for actually bringing that back and putting that back on the agenda again. And I wonder if I could ask you to ask Councillor or Director Hernan at least to speak to that, because I think he can make discussions we've had make a good case for reintroducing that back into our budget process.
Councillor Thompson, that's not actually part of this report. You're talking about a resolution from a meeting ago. So I would think that we would at least have to have a motion to reconsider before we could start talking about that. We'd have to do a notice for our next meeting of that. Does that sound fair to you?
Yes, indeed.
You muted again. You're on mute, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes. Yeah, no, I appreciate the fact that we're discussing capital tonight. But I have had this discussion with Director Hernan, and I think it's something that I would like to see brought back because it's, in terms of the cost, it's fairly minimal in terms of an expenditure in that regard. But I think the overall benefits from the expenditure definitely outweighs the cost in this particular case. So I'll be for sure bringing that back at our next meeting. But thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, I just wanted to question one thing about flagpoles. I seem to recall in previous reports that they were a risk to the public or to staff from a health and safety point of view. So is that something that we should cancel? I red flagged me when I saw it in the report.
Director Hernan?
I just wanted,
Julia?
I just want to say that the flagpoles were taken out, so they were being deferred.
Yeah, but I think the question is, should we be deferring them? Director Hernan?
So through you, Your Worship, the flagpoles that were a safety concern were the ones that had to be lowered. They were the ones that we had to undo the mast and drop the pole down. And that's why that was a safety concern to change the flag. And I believe we've gotten rid of all those. Any flagpoles which are changed now are the proper ones with a proper base, and the flags are internally mounted. Sorry, the ropes are internally in the pole, so it's no longer a safety issue. But as Julia McKenzie indicated, this is one of the projects we've deferred for this year.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Director Hernan. I appreciate the report. Thank you.
Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of quick questions. I thought at the last meeting we decided to do the sweeping, but we decided not to do a bunch of them on here as proceeding. I'm not sure what on this list are done by town staff versus private contract. I'm not sure what. Again, we're kind of a strange world now where, you know, Doug Ford could come out tomorrow and say all municipal
Councillor Withy, can you hear me now? Councillor Withy? Councillor Withy? I think we have got a bad connection there. Are there any other questions? We'll go back to Councillor Withy's question as soon as we get him back. Any other questions for the capital? Okay. All right, I'm going to pause for just a second. Councillor Fitzgerald.
I would be willing to kill some time while we're waiting for Councillor Withy. I think it's important that everyone recognize that we as a municipality and we as a council and our staff, all our staff, wish we could do more for the community. We just simply are not given the opportunity through legislation from the province to actually run an unbalanced budget. So if there was a way that we could open our coffers and help with the community more, I think you're looking at a full council and a full staff that would do everything in their power to do that. And I don't think that at the end of the day, a lot of people recognize that we actually fiscally can't do that. So I just want to make everyone aware of that, because I get that question all the time. What are we going to do? Well, our hands are tied. So we can do things as individuals in our community, and we can do things as businesses in our community, and just generally try and help out everyone in our community. And that's what we can do.
Well put, thank you. I think we've got Councillor Withy back. Councillor Withy?
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, you mostly broke up, so you might want to start at the beginning again.
Oh, at my end, my screen went just completely white and disconnected. So my question was about this list of capital works. I mentioned the last meeting we were getting stopping on. I see something on here. On it from what I recall from our last meeting, and my other list,
Okay.
Easily.
I don't think we're going to get there. Councillor Armour.
I think one of the questions that Councillor Withy was asking was how many of these jobs are in-house, but I believe Director Herning could probably answer that. I think most of them are being set out for tender and will be done by private companies. He might be able to, he can answer that better than I can.
Director Herning?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. On the capital works, you're correct that this is contract work in most cases. Obviously, we have our engineer tech, which oversees the contract work, so he's directly involved with it. And we do have minimal crews, the odd time working with a contract crew. But the capital list, which you're seeing before you, the list of roads and work that are being done is on the capital side. It's with contractors. Operations does similar work, and that's where dust suppression, that's where roadside mowing, that's where that stuff lives, is in the operational side. And those are the major changes we made to the budget this year, which Councillor Thompson was talking about, and I guess we'll discuss at future meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Wiebe?
Thank you, Worship. I think also Councillor Withy may have been driving towards the point that if things change quickly from the province, for example, if suddenly Doug Ford says you can't have more than 2 people in the same vicinity, because in other places of the world, that's what's happened. you can't have more than two people next to each other, let's say. So I think maybe to perhaps pick up on what he potentially was asking was, what happens if the legislation changes drastically in the next month or so, and these contracts and these companies simply can't fulfill orders? How do we navigate those waters?
Director Hernan?
So the discussions we've been having with the contractors is obviously with COVID-19 in mind and the safety precautions, and we're verifying that they can work under safe conditions. So a ditching crew, you'd have 2 dump trucks, you'd have a flag person, possibly 2 depending on their location, and an equipment operator. They're all more than 2 meters apart. In many cases, they're 15, 20 meters apart. So the companies we're working with feel there's no concerns with them doing these jobs safely. Same with brushing crews. Any of the work that we're doing, gravel hauls, things like that, even the construction jobs. And we've talked to some of the large construction companies as to how they handle it. You know, they will work around it to keep their employees working and to help the economy go. And I guess if it's all bets off, if the Ford government steps up one day and says you got to work in a group of 1, well, we'll have to adjust and we'll deal with it from there.
Councillor Withey, I see you're back. I think your fellow councillors asked both your questions. Are you good with that? Maybe you're not back. Okay. I think I'm going to call the question. All in favor? And that's carried.
Are safe, then it's good. If we're continuing on these things, I just hope that you know, that's how that works. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah. Okay. I have a resolution. I need a mover and a seconder for the resolution for confirmation bylaw. Councillor Fitzgerald. And seconder, Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved, the confirmation bylaw 2020-42 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 6th day of April 2020. All in favor? And that's carried. And can I have a mover and seconder for adjournment? Moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Alcock. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 6:35 p.m. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Council. Thank you, staff.
Cheers, everyone. Be
Thank you,
safe.
everyone. Can Joel notify us when we stop streaming?
Wash your hands.
Be safe.
Have we stopped streaming?
No.
No.